The wind howled across the Kansas plain, carrying dust and distant thunder, when Evelyn Pierce realized she'd made a mistake she couldn't undo. 3 days on a rickety wagon from Fort Redstone, her hands blistered and her nerves frayed, and ahead lay a ranch owned by a man she'd agreed to marry without ever meeting. The driver, an old trapper named Bo Carter, spat over the side and said, "You sure about this, ma'am? Folks say Eli Granger ain't much for conversation, nor mercy." Evelyn managed a thin smile. "I don't need mercy, Mr. Carter. I need safety." Bo grunted, flicking the reins. "Safety don't come cheap out here. Sometimes it comes with a wedding ring." The words stung more than they should have. Evelyn looked down at the folded letter in her lap. 6 weeks old, the ink smudged by tears and dust. Eli Granger, a widowed rancher in need of a wife. The ad had been simple, almost cold, a capable woman, age and beauty secondary to grit. She'd answered in desperation, fleeing debts her late father had left behind, and men who'd started knocking at her door. Kansas offered no guarantees, but Cincinnati offered a noose. "Before we go further," Bo said, his tone softening, "you mind me asking, what's waiting for you there?" Evelyn's voice barely carried over the wagon's creak. "A chance to start over." If you've ever had to start over with nothing but hope and fear in your pocket, type yes in the comments below. Because that's exactly where her story began. The ranch appeared at last, nestled in a wide valley ringed with black hills and restless sky. A log house stood at the center, solid and solitary, like it had been built to outlast the world. On the porch stood a man, tall as the doorframe, shoulders like barn beams, arms crossed. Even from a distance, Evelyn could sense something coiled in him, like a bear forced into human skin. "That'd be Mr. Granger," Bo muttered. "Lord help you, ma'am." Evelyn stepped down, her skirts dragging in the mud, heart hammering like a drum. Eli descended the steps slowly, boots sinking deep into the earth. He was younger than she'd imagined, early 30s perhaps, his hair dark and untrimmed, his face bronzed and cut by weather. But it was his eyes, gray and cold as gunmetal, that froze her in place. "You're smaller than I expected," he said finally, voice rough as gravel. Evelyn straightened her back. "And you're taller than any man has the right to be." Something flickered across his face. Not amusement, not quite, but a shift, like he hadn't been spoken to that way in years. "Preacher's inside," he said. "Best get this done before the light goes." It was the least romantic wedding imaginable. A parlor, 2 strangers, a nervous preacher who looked ready to bolt, and a ring that slid over Evelyn's trembling hand before she could even process the words, "I do." By sundown, she was Mrs. Granger. Eli led her through the house afterward. Everything oversized, built to withstand both storm and solitude. The ceilings high, the furniture heavy, the silence heavier still. "Your room's upstairs," he said. "Not ours?" He met her eyes for the first time since the vows. "Not yet. Some things take learning." The pause after that word, learning, made Evelyn's pulse skip. "I see. No," he said quietly. "You don't. Not yet." He left her there, standing in the wide hallway that smelled faintly of pine and tobacco. Upstairs, her room was small but neat. A bed, a washstand, a window overlooking the pasture. Through that window, she watched him for hours. Eli moved like a man burdened by something invisible, his strength precise, never wasted. He spoke little to his ranch hands, but they obeyed fast. Even the horses seemed to fear him, or maybe respect him. When the bell rang for supper, Evelyn descended, nerves wound tight. He'd cooked, meat and potatoes, perfectly portioned, a soldier's meal. They ate mostly in silence. Finally, she gathered courage. "Why me?" Eli didn't look up. "Because you answered the letter." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." She set her fork down, refusing to let fear swallow her curiosity. "And the women in town? Surely there were others." He met her gaze then, eyes cold and unblinking. "They're afraid of me." Her breath caught. "Should I be?" "That depends," he said, voice low, "on how much you like honesty." Evelyn swallowed hard. "Try me." He leaned back in his chair. "I'm not built for gentleness, never was. My father used to say a man like me was born to fight the land, not share a home." "And yet you asked for one," she said. "Even the roughest land needs tending." Something in his tone, weary, resigned, stirred something reckless in her. "And what about your first wife?" The air turned still. Eli's jaw tightened, his fork pausing midair. "She's buried out back." Evelyn's heart stuttered. "I'm sorry, I didn't—" "She fell ill," he said flatly. "There's nothing to be sorry for." But his eyes betrayed him. Whatever killed his first wife had left something alive in him. Guilt, maybe, or rage. When she finally retreated upstairs, she locked the door. Not out of fear, but instinct. Yet sleep wouldn't come. From below, she heard his boots pacing, floorboards groaning under his weight. Then silence. Then the soft thud of a chair. He was awake too. Evelyn rose and looked through the railing down at the parlor. Eli sat by the dying fire, head bowed, whiskey glass in hand. He looked less like a giant now, and more like a man haunted by ghosts. If you've ever looked at someone and known they were fighting battles you couldn't see, leave an emoji in the comments. Because that was Evelyn that night, watching a man made of storms, trying to decide whether to fear him or understand him. The days that followed passed in uneasy rhythm. Evelyn learned to tend chickens, patch fences, cook on a wood stove that hissed and smoked. Eli spoke only when necessary, though she caught him watching her more often than he thought she noticed. Once, when she struggled with a stubborn gate latch, he appeared without a word, fixing it in seconds. Their hands brushed, and she felt a charge like lightning striking dry earth. He stepped back quickly. "Don't do that?" "Do what?" "Look at me like I'm something you can fix." "I wasn't," she lied. "Yes, you were," he said, turning away. "You'll regret it." That night, a thunderstorm rolled across the valley, the kind that split the sky and made the walls tremble. Evelyn, restless, descended the stairs to check the windows, and found Eli standing by the door, rifle in hand. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Storm brings trouble," he said. "Cattle spook. Sometimes worse." "Worse?" He looked at her then, not the cold stare of before, but something more primal. "Men come riding under thunder, think it hides their intentions." As if summoned by the words, a flash of lightning revealed movement beyond the fence. 2 figures on horseback, too still to be cowhands. Eli's jaw clenched. "Stay inside?" He stepped out into the storm before she could protest, rain hammering his shoulders like bullets. Evelyn watched, heart in her throat, as one rider dismounted, shouting something lost to the thunder. Gunfire cracked, one shot, then another. Evelyn screamed his name, running to the porch as lightning split the sky again. Eli stood over the fallen rider, smoke curling from his revolver. The other horseman fled into the dark. He turned toward her, rain and gunpowder streaking his face. "Told you," he said, voice ragged. "Storms bring trouble." She should have been afraid, but as he holstered his gun and limped back toward her, something inside her shifted. For the first time since she left Cincinnati, she felt safer than she had in years. Not because the world was less dangerous, but because the danger was on her side. "Come inside," she whispered. He obeyed, dripping water onto the floorboards, eyes burning with something she couldn't name. "You shouldn't have seen that. You shouldn't have faced it alone." The silence that followed was thick as molasses. Finally, he said, "You keep defying me, Mrs. Granger. Maybe because I'm not afraid of you. You should be. Then stop giving me reasons not to be." He stared at her for a long time, so long she wondered if he'd speak again. Then, quietly, he said, "Go lock your door." "Eli, please," he rasped, and that one word, "please," broke something inside her. She obeyed, closing herself in her small upstairs room. But she didn't sleep, because outside her window, thunder rolled, rain poured, and somewhere below her feet, a man who'd killed to protect her sat alone, fighting the storm inside himself. If this were you, alone in a frontier house with a man everyone called dangerous, would you have stayed or run? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe, because in part 2, when Evelyn learns the truth about Eli's past and the railroad men who come for their land, she'll have to decide if love is worth killing for. The storm broke before dawn, leaving behind a silence so thick it rang in Evelyn's ears. The horizon smoked with mist, and the scent of rain clung to everything. Downstairs, she found Eli already awake, shirt damp from sweat and rain, his revolver resting beside his coffee cup. The body of the man from last night lay under a canvas near the barn. Evelyn froze. "You killed him." Eli didn't look up. "He came here armed. He knew the risk." "Who was he?" "Railroad scout," Eli said flatly. "Been casing land across the valley, making offers nobody can refuse. When that fails, they burn barns or misplace cattle. He came to warn me I was next." Evelyn's throat tightened. "And you?" "I warned him back." There was no pride in his voice, only weariness, the kind that came from years of fighting battles a decent man shouldn't have to. Outside, a crow screamed. The day felt wrong, heavy with something waiting to happen. Evelyn wrapped her shawl tighter. "What are you going to do?" "Bury him, then start building fences higher." "Fences won't stop men like that," she said quietly. "They'll send more." Eli's eyes lifted to hers. "Then they'll find I'm not easy to move." He rose, crossing the room with that slow, deliberate stride that made the floorboards groan. She noticed for the first time that he favored his left leg, a small limp he tried to hide. "What happened?" she asked. He paused at the door. "Bullet from the war. Never healed right." Evelyn followed him outside, boots sinking into mud. He stopped near the barn, pulled the canvas back. The man's face was pale and young, hardly older than 20. "He's somebody's son," she whispered. "So was I," Eli said. "Didn't stop the killing then, won't now." The words chilled her, yet beneath them she heard something else, regret, buried deep under the gravel of his voice. By midday the body was gone, the ground smoothed over, marked only by a fresh cross made from wagon wood. Eli stood staring at it long after the others left. "You shouldn't have to do that alone," Evelyn said softly. "Don't make it softer than it is," he replied. "The man came to steal what's ours." "Ours?" she repeated. He turned. "You're part of this now, whether you want it or not." Something in his tone, not command but recognition, sent heat through her chest. "Then I'll stand with you," she said. He studied her, like he didn't quite believe it. Then, slowly, he nodded once. That night, when he sat by the fire with his maps and ledgers, Evelyn joined him without asking. She traced the red lines drawn across the valley. "These marks, the railroad? Every ranch they've claimed so far," he said. "They pay small at first. If a man refuses, they make sure he has an accident, fire, flood, stampede. And no one stops them? Law's bought and paid for. They call it progress. I call it theft." Evelyn looked at his hands, scarred, rough, the kind that had built everything they had. "Then we fight back." He glanced at her. "You think I haven't tried? Maybe you fought like a soldier," she said, "but you need to fight like a husband now." He blinked, as if the word itself startled him. "And what would that look like? Like not carrying the whole damn world alone." For a moment, something like a smile threatened the corner of his mouth. "You talk bold for someone half my size." "Someone has to," she replied, pouring him more coffee. "Otherwise, you'll drown in silence. If you've ever known someone who carried every burden but never let anyone help, tell me in the comments." Because that was Eli Granger, a man built to endure, too proud to share the weight. 2 days later, riders appeared on the ridge again. This time, they didn't hide. 4 men, rifles across their saddles, the lead one carrying a letter sealed with a railroad insignia. Eli met them at the fence line, rifle slung low but ready. Evelyn watched from the porch, her heart hammering. The spokesman, tall, clean-shaven, a slicker city man, raised his hand. "Mr. Granger, I presume. I'm Henry Blackwell, legal representative of the Redstone Pacific Railroad. We've made multiple offers for your land. You've refused everyone. Consider this your final chance." Eli's jaw flexed. "This ranch ain't for sale." Blackwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You might reconsider. There's talk of eminent domain. The government has plans for a new line. Either way, this property won't be yours long." Eli stepped closer, towering over him. "You send hired guns again, I'll send 'em back in pieces." Blackwell didn't flinch. "That sounds like a threat." "It's a promise." Evelyn gripped the porch rail so tightly her fingers ached. She could see the danger winding tighter with every word. Blackwell tipped his hat. "Then, I'll tell my employers the giant has chosen his grave. Good day, Mr. Granger." They rode off, leaving dust and silence behind. When Eli turned back toward the house, his expression was unreadable, a storm trapped behind stone. Evelyn met him at the steps. "You can't outshoot a corporation." "I can try," he said simply. She caught his arm. "Eli, they'll destroy you. They'll have to find me standing first." That night, he didn't sleep. Neither did she. The air in the house felt charged, ready to ignite. At one point, she came downstairs and found him staring at his reflection in the dark window. "You think I'm a monster, don't you?" he said quietly. "No," she replied. "I think you're afraid you might be." He turned toward her, and for the first time, she saw exhaustion in his eyes. "You should have stayed in Cincinnati." "And do what? Marry some man who gambles away my dowry? Hide forever?" She shook her head. "No, Eli. I'd rather die fighting beside you than live safe and empty." He stared at her a long time. Then, almost reluctantly, he said, "You really believe in me, don't you?" "I believe in us," she said. "If you were Evelyn, stuck between fear and loyalty, would you have stayed? Drop your thoughts below." Days passed. The valley grew restless. Neighbors whispered about sabotage, missing cattle, cut fences, poisoned wells. The railroad wanted Eli gone, and they weren't shy about their methods. Then one afternoon, while Eli was out riding fence, Evelyn heard hoofbeats, fast, urgent, approaching from the north. She stepped onto the porch, her rifle already in hand. Two strangers dismounted, faces hard beneath wide-brimmed hats. "Ma'am," one said with a mock bow, "we're here on company business. Need to inspect your property." "You can leave," Evelyn said evenly. "Not without doing our job," the other sneered. "You alone here?" "My husband's close," she lied. "Closer than you think." The first man laughed. "Then he won't mind if we have a look." He reached for the door handle. Evelyn raised the rifle. "Touch that door, and you'll be chewing lead by supper." The laughter died. The men glanced at each other, uncertain now. One tried bluffing. "You wouldn't shoot." "Wouldn't I?" she said, her finger steady on the trigger. "I'm small, but I don't miss." For a long, tense second, no one moved. Then the sound of a horse behind them broke the standoff. Eli appeared, rifle already aimed, fury burning in his eyes. "Get away from my wife." The intruders froze. One stammered something about a misunderstanding. Eli fired, a warning shot that kicked up dust at their boots. They scrambled to their horses and galloped off without looking back. Eli lowered his gun slowly, his breath ragged. "You shouldn't have faced them alone." Evelyn's hands were still shaking, but her voice was steady. "You taught me to stand tall, remember?" He stared at her, the tiny woman who'd faced down hired guns with nothing but resolve, and something inside him cracked. He reached out, his hand trembling, brushing her cheek. "You could have been killed, but I wasn't." He closed his eyes. "I don't deserve a woman like you." "Then earn me," she whispered. That night, the distance between them finally dissolved. Not in chaos, but in quiet. No thunder, no storm, just the sound of breathing, and two hearts finally sinking in rhythm. Eli wasn't gentle, but he was deliberate, like a man worshiping what he didn't think he'd ever be worthy of. And Evelyn didn't flinch. She met his strength with her own, proving again that power wasn't only in muscle, but in will. When morning came, sunlight spilled through the window, catching the scar on his shoulder. She traced it lightly. "How many battles have you fought?" "Too many." "And how many did you win?" He looked at her, eyes softer now. "Just this one." If you've ever loved someone who taught you what strength really means, hit that subscribe button and stay with us, because the final chapter is coming. The morning air was sharp with smoke and dread. Evelyn woke to the sound of horses, the pounding of hooves that didn't belong to their own herd. Eli was already gone from the bed, his rifle missing from the wall. She threw on her shawl and ran outside. The valley looked wrong, gray haze curling from the ridge, the unmistakable glow of fire eating dry grass. "Stay in the house!" Eli's voice boomed from the barnyard, but she didn't listen. She could see riders, 6, maybe 7, fanning out across the pasture, torches flaring like devil's teeth in the wind. Railroad men. They came shouting promises and threats, their words lost in the crack of gunfire. Eli fired back, dropping one. The others ducked and returned fire, bullets ripping through the corral fence. Evelyn hit the ground behind a water trough, the taste of dust and terror thick on her tongue. Eli turned toward her, yelling, "Get inside! I'm not leaving you! Go!" She crawled toward the porch, dragging the shotgun from beside the door. Her hands trembled, but her aim was steady. The next time one of the riders broke cover, she fired. The man fell hard, his torch flying. It rolled through the dirt until it met the wall of the feed shed and ignited. Flames raced upward, roaring like the storm that had once brought them together. The whole ranch seemed to catch fire at once. The shed, the lower fence, even the wagon by the barn. Smoke and gunpowder tangled in the wind. Eli cut down another attacker, but took a grazing shot across his shoulder. He stumbled, blood darkening his shirt. Evelyn screamed his name, then saw one of the men creeping up behind him with a pistol. She didn't think. She fired. The man dropped without a sound. For a moment, the world went still. 3 of the raiders turned and fled toward the ridge, their torches swinging wild. Eli walked to where the last body lay and kicked the gun away. The flames threw light across his face, painting him in gold and shadow. He looked like something forged by war, terrifying, magnificent, unstoppable. Evelyn lowered her weapon. "It's over!" He shook his head. "It's just starting." The wind shifted, carrying sparks toward the house. Evelyn ran for buckets, pumping water from the well until her arms screamed. Eli joined her, his wounded arm useless, but his right hand still strong enough to fight the fire. They worked until their skin blistered and the flames finally died back, leaving smoke curling from blackened wood. When it was done, Eli sank to his knees in the mud, breathing hard. Evelyn knelt beside him. "You're bleeding?" He looked down as though noticing for the first time. "I've had worse." "You'll have worse if you don't let me clean it." She guided him inside, helped him sit by the hearth, tore strips from a linen sheet to bind the wound. He didn't flinch, only watched her with that unreadable gaze, storm gray and full of unspoken things. "You shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. "You could have died, and you would have died if I hadn't. That's my burden to carry, Evelyn." She tied the knot hard enough to make him wince. "No, not anymore." The house smelled of smoke and iron. Outside, the first light of dawn was creeping over the ridge. Evelyn brushed soot from her skirt, then looked at him. "They'll come again." "I know." "Then we prepare." He almost smiled. "You talk like a soldier." "You married one," she said, surprising even herself. "Just one that doesn't carry a gun every day. If you've ever fought for something the world tried to take from you, leave A in the comments. Because that was Evelyn now, no longer the fragile bride, but the fortress no fire could consume. By afternoon, neighbors began to arrive. Some came offering help, others came to gawk. The sheriff came too, a wiry man who smelled of whiskey and fear. "Heard you had trouble," he said. "Railroad says your husband started it." Eli's voice was quiet but dangerous. "Then the railroad lies." The sheriff eyed the burned bodies out back. "That'll be for the judge to decide." "There won't be any judge," Eli said. "Not for them. Still, there'll be questions." Evelyn stepped forward. "Then ask them to me. Those men came to kill us. We defended our home." The sheriff's gaze flicked from her soot-streaked face to the rifle still leaning by the door. "You pulled a trigger, ma'am?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Guess you'll do fine out here." Then he tipped his hat and rode away. When the dust settled, the ranch felt emptier. Half their outbuildings were gone, their livestock scattered, but they were alive, and that meant something. That night, Eli sat at the table, the lamplight catching the sharp planes of his face. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "You saved mine first." He looked down at his hands, scarred and raw. "You shouldn't have had to become like me." "Maybe you don't see what you really are," she said. "You keep calling yourself a monster, but I've seen monsters. They don't bleed when they kill. They don't pray over graves." He swallowed hard, voice rough. "I've done things, Evelyn. Bad things. The war changed me." "And I changed you back," she said softly. He reached across the table, his massive hand covering hers completely. "You did. If you've ever believed someone could still be redeemed, even after they stopped believing it themselves, tell me below. Because that's what Evelyn saw every time she looked at him. The next days were long, rebuilding fences, patching burned walls, gathering what the fire hadn't taken. Word spread fast through the valley. The railroad had lost men at Granger Ranch. Some said Eli was cursed, others said he was a legend. Either way, no one dared cross him. But Evelyn knew the railroad wouldn't give up. Men with money never did. One evening, as the sun sank blood-red behind the hills, a rider approached, alone. She recognized the slick gray coat even before she saw his face. Henry Blackwell. Eli stepped onto the porch, rifle cradled casually, but ready. Blackwell raised both hands. "Easy, Mr. Granger. I didn't come to fight." "Then say your piece and ride." Blackwell's smile was thin. "The company's cutting losses. You've made your point. But men died. That draws attention. There'll be investigators, courts, and they'll all want to know who pulled the trigger first." Eli's finger brushed the rifle's trigger guard. "You threatening my wife?" "On the contrary," Blackwell said. "I'm offering her protection. The court loves a grieving widow." Evelyn's heart kicked. "You think you can scare me into betraying him?" "I think you're a survivor," Blackwell said, "and survivors choose the winning side." Evelyn stepped forward until she was almost nose to chest with him. "I already did." Before he could answer, Eli spoke. "You've got 10 seconds to get off my land." Blackwell held his gaze for a long, silent beat, then turned his horse. "Enjoy what's left of your kingdom, Mr. Granger. Empires fall faster than men think." As his silhouette vanished into the dusk, Eli's shoulders slumped. "He's not done." "No," Evelyn said, "but neither are we." That night, she wrote letters, to the neighboring ranchers, to the church, to anyone willing to stand against the railroad. Her handwriting was sharp, deliberate. One ranch alone can be destroyed, 10 cannot. Within a week, wagons began to arrive, men and women carrying tools, rifles, food. The valley turned into a camp of unity. Together, they built stronger barns, patrolled at night, shared everything they had. When Blackwell returned weeks later, with a legal writ and federal marshal escort, he didn't find a single ranch. He found a settlement flying a hand-painted sign that read, "The Free Valley." Evelyn stood at the front steps, rifle on her shoulder, the settlers behind her. Eli stood beside her, tall and unyielding. Blackwell read the writ aloud, his voice shaking slightly. "By order of the United States," Eli cut him off. "This land was won by blood and bone. You'll need more than paper to take it." The marshal looked at the gathered settlers and hesitated. "We're not here for war." "Then don't start one," Evelyn said. There was a long pause, then the marshal turned his horse. "Let the courts sort it out. I'm not dying for a railroad." When they were gone, cheers rose through the valley. Eli looked at her, disbelief and pride mixing on his face. "You did this." "We did this," she corrected. Months later, spring returned. The land healed. Grass grew over blackened soil. The ranch stood taller than before, rebuilt by many hands. One morning, Evelyn stood on the porch watching the sunrise. Eli came up behind her, resting a hand over the small swell of her belly. "You sure about this?" he asked softly. "About what?" "Bringing a child into a world this hard," she smiled. "It's the only kind worth bringing one into, the kind we fought for." He pressed his forehead to hers. "You're the strongest person I've ever known." "I learned from you," she whispered. "If you believe love can build something that even fire can't destroy, drop a love emoji in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because stories like Evelyn and Eli's remind us that sometimes strength wears a woman's face, and sometimes salvation looks like a man the world calls dangerous. As the sun rose higher, the valley shimmered with light. The war was over, but their legend had just begun. The fragile bride had become the flame no storm could quench, and the giant who'd once feared his own power had found peace in her hands. Together, they'd rewritten what survival meant on the frontier, and proved that even in the roughest land, love could take root and grow wild.